Hi there, this is the video on exponential notation and the order of operations. Our first objective is to simplify expressions that contain exponents. So the first thing we have is as repeated multiplication can be written in two ways. We have 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, or 3 to the 5th power as we call it. Now when we look at this 3 to the 5th power, I'm going to write it over here. This 5 is what we call the exponent. And the 3 is what we call the base. Now what this does is this tells us the exponent. So the exponent is going to be this number right here. This indicates how many times and even though it's the base, we're going to call this the factor. It's how many times the factor occurs in the multiplication. The expression 3 to the 5th is in what we call exponential notation. We call that 3 a factor. It's the base. That's what we call the factor. It's the base. Factors are when we multiply things together. So each of these 3's is considered a factor. We have 5 factors of 3. To simplify a numerical expression containing exponents, we write each factor as many times as indicated by the exponent, and then carry out the multiplication. So for the first one here, we have 4 to the 3rd power. So we can rewrite this as 4 times 4 times 4. Now when we do this multiplication, you can type this or do this a couple different ways. Multiplication is what we call commutative, meaning we can multiply things in any order that we want. So for example, we could start with, okay, we know 4 times 4 is 16, and then we have to bring over that other 4. So that's one way we can do this to get an answer of 64. Or you can just type in your calculator 4 times 4 times 4 to get the 64. So this next one here, we have two things going on. We have two different bases here. We have a 2 and a 3. So we need to look at each of these separately. So for the first one, 2 squared, that means we have 2 factors of 2, and we also have 4 factors of 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now again, we can multiply this in any order. We could say, well, we know 2 times 2 is 4. We could say 3 times a 3 is a 9, and 3 times 3 is 9. And then we could multiply those numbers all together. And you could keep going with any way you want to do this. 4 times 9 is 36, 36 times 9. Or you could say 9 times 9 is 81, and 81 times 4. It doesn't matter how you work through these. In the end, we get an answer of 324. These would be the final answers when we are evaluating these. Now, you can type these into your calculator. Without having it on the screen here, I can explain to you what you want to type. So for example, the first one, this 4 cubed. I'm just going to write off to the right-hand side for some scratch work. To write 4 cubed in your calculator, you are going to type first the number 4. Now we know you could type 4 times 4 times 4, but depending on your numbers, you don't want to type a whole bunch. And then above the division key, you're going to see a key that looks like that. That's going to represent the exponent. So you type that, and then whatever your exponent is of 3. So 4 exponent 3, and then you press enter. Now, when we try to do letter B, we have to be a little bit more careful because we have two bases here. So the first thing you're going to do is type 2, and then again that exponent button above the division sign, and then another 2. However, when you do this, you'll realize that the cursor is still blinking in the exponent. So what you have to do here is make sure you press the button to the right. So press this button, the arrow key to the right. And when you do that, that'll move the cursor out of the exponent. And then you can type the multiplication sign again, and then 3 caret 4 for the exponent. So when you do this in your calculator, you should see something that looks like this. If you forget to press this over button right here, you're going to end up typing all of this stuff all up into the exponent. So you want to be very careful with that. Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is I want you to try these 3 your turn problems. Read the instructions carefully and make sure you're doing what it's asking. What I'd recommend is to pause the video, try these, and then unpause the video and check your answers with mine. Go ahead. Okay, so for problem A, it's telling us to write this in exponential notation. So be careful not to go too far with this problem. A common mistake is we end up doing this for this problem. This is where it's very important to read the instructions carefully. If it's asking us to write it in scientific notation, we are going to leave our answer like this. Also, make sure you're always putting a circle or a square or rectangle or highlight your final answers. So when I'm looking at your homework in the exam, I know what your final answer is. Part B, write that in exponential notation. We see that we have 4 2's and 3 3's. So we have 2 to the 4th, 3 cubed. Again, we're writing this in exponential notation. Notice that I've been using a dot to represent multiplication. You could use an asterisk like your calculator shows, or you could use an X like the times sign that you're used to. However, when we get into algebra, a lot of times we'll just use the dot because we use variables of X's and we don't want to confuse things. Now, letter C, the instructions are different here. These instructions tell us to simplify, so we have to actually work through and calculate this problem. We have 2 3's and 3 5's, and I just did them too. 3 times 3 is 9, 5 times 5 times 5 is 125, and multiply that, you get 1125 altogether. Okay, now we're moving on to our next objective. We want to use the order of operations to simplify expressions. So what this little bottom part here just says that more than one operation might occur in an expression. And depending on the order that you calculate these, the answer could be different. So for example, if we're taking 3 plus 4 times 5, depending on here, we're multiplying first, here we're adding first, you're getting 2 different answers. So what the order of the operation says is you have to keep the order consistent no matter which problem you're working in. And so let's go ahead and look at those on the next page. Now you're familiar with the order of operations. This is something you probably have heard of before. You may have heard the term PEMDAS to help you remember. I'm not going to go by that because there's some fine print with PEMDAS that you might not be familiar with or you might forget. So we're going to talk about these 4 steps here. The first step is we want to look for grouping symbols such as parentheses. It could also be something like square brackets. We might not see too many of those in this class, but you will in other classes. You might also see curly brackets. And again, it mentions parentheses. Another one you might see is absolute value bars. We're mainly going to be seeing things in this class with parentheses. But when we see parentheses, sometimes they can mean multiplication. For example, you could see something like 5 parentheses 4. That is the same thing as 5 times 4. So when we see parentheses that represent multiplication, we're not necessarily doing them first. What we're looking for is operations inside of the parentheses, like 5 times maybe 4 minus 3. Then we would do this first because there's an operation inside of the parentheses. Step 2 is any exponents. Step 3 is multiplication and division as they occur from left to right. Same thing with addition and subtraction. They can be interchanged. We work left to right, which is why I don't like PEMDAS because that puts us in the mindset that we have to follow a certain order. So let's go ahead and look at the 2 problems from example 2. The first one, 10 minus 2 cubed plus 4. 2 to the 3rd power can also be said as 2 cubed. Well, we do not have any parentheses. However, we do have an exponent, 2 cubed. So we have to do that first. Now, if you need to, you can write this out. We know 2 cubed is the same as 2 times 2 times 2, which would be, right, 8. So now we can write this out. I'm going to put equals because what I'm about to write is equal to the previous expression. 10 minus 8 plus 4. Now, we simplified the exponents. So now step 3, do the multiplication division as it occurs. We don't have any multiplication division here, so we're going to step 4. Do the addition and subtraction as they occur from left to right. So we have to start with the left side of the problem and work our way over. The first operation we have is 10 minus 8. So we can write that as 2 plus 4. And lastly, 2 plus 4 is 6. And then you always want to check your answer by typing this into your calculator just as you see it. Okay, let's look at example 2b. So first step, look for grouping symbols. Well, we do see parentheses and we want to look inside of them. Is there an operation in them? Yes, there is. So we want to do this first. So again, I'm going to put the equals and write right below the problem. So we have 16 plus 8 minus 3 is 5. Now, if you put the 5 in parentheses, that's okay. That's not going to change anything, but you don't need the parentheses here. Now, step 2, exponents, we don't have any of those. Multiplication and division. Well, we have 16 plus 5 times 2. That means we have to do that multiplication first. So we know 5 times 2 is 10. So we do 16 plus 10. Now we only have an addition, so we get 26. Again, you want to make sure you type this into your calculator just as you see it to check your answer. The parentheses are above the 8 and 9, and you can just use them and type them. Okay, now I want to jump down. Let's go down and look at the your turn problem, letter C. I want to do that one with you, and then I'm going to let you try the last 5 on your own. So looking at letter C, I want you to take a moment and look at that and think about which operation you would need to do first. Correct, 6 minus 3, because that's an operation inside of the parentheses. So again, I'm writing right below the problem with an equal sign, 4 plus 2. If you want to use the parentheses, you can. 6 minus 3 is 3, and we're squaring it. So step 1, check. Step 2, exponents. Okay, well we also have exponents here, which would be right here. So we want to simplify that next. So now we have 4 plus 2, 3 squared. And so remember, 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. You can put times 9 like that, or you could put the 9 in the parentheses. It doesn't matter. Do multiplication division as they occur? Well, we have 4 plus 2 times 9. So we have to do that first, the 2 times 9. So we're left with 4 plus 18 to give us an answer of 22. Good. You can see that I've just inserted a picture of the calculator screen for these 3 problems that I'm checking. So the first one, I have it right here, 10 minus 2 cubed plus 4, we get an answer of 6. Letter B, 16 plus 8 minus 3 times 2, 26. And the last one, 4 plus 2, 6 minus 3 squared is 22. Now, even though your calculator knows order of operations and will do this all for you, it is required that you show me all of this work here. It is very, very important that you show me where you are getting this answer, meaning showing me all the steps or the process, if you will. On a homework assignment or the exam, if you only give me an answer, you will not receive any credit. It's very important that you show me everything in order to receive full credit. Okay, so now what I would like you to do is I want you to pause the video and work through A, B, then D, E, and F. I want you to do them by hand. So start with A, do it by hand, then check your answer on the calculator. If you do not get the same thing, go back through your steps, double check that you followed the order of operations agreement. Once you're okay with that problem, move on to letter B. Do it by hand first, and then check using your calculator. And in the event that you are getting something wrong and you can't find your mistake, make sure you go back through and put a circle by it or maybe star that problem so you know you need to go back to it. And then move on to the next one. Once you're finished with all your problems, then unpause the video and check your answers with mine. And for anything that you got incorrect, make sure you understand your mistakes and then try the problem again. Okay, so at this point, go ahead, pause the video, and good luck. Okay, Let's go ahead and make sure you are okay with the answers. Letters A and B. Letter A, we're getting 8. Letter B, we're getting 19. Again, just make sure you follow the steps as I did and you show all your work. Nothing too tricky there, if you will. Letter D, we have grouping symbols, so we have to simplify that first, but then we have an exponent to simplify, and then working left to right with multiplication division, we end up with a 3. I ran out of room, so I just put a vertical line and moved up here to continue. Letter E, again, grouping, so we simplify, and then working left to right, we have a multiplication, and then we have a division, and then the subtraction of 2. Now, letter F, you have to be very careful. We see that we have these grouping symbols of parentheses, but now we have 2 operations inside of that. We have addition and division. So you have to figure out, do we add first or divide? Well, going by the order of operations, we do multiplication, division first. So within the grouping symbols, we still have to apply the order of operations. So we divide first to get a 2, so then we have to take that 3 plus 2, which is 5. Now we want to multiply before we do any adding and subtracting, and then we work addition and subtraction left to right. Be very careful. A lot of times we see this 25 minus 4 out front, and we think we change that to 21. So be very careful not to jump to any addition and subtraction until it's time. Now, if you have specific questions about any problems in this lesson, and you're not quite sure how I did something, or maybe I skipped over, or whatever it may be, it's very important that you either email me, you can send me a picture of your work and say, I can't find my mistake here, or you can go to the tutoring center, but it's really important that you reach out for help. At this point, now that you don't have any questions, and then go ahead and sign into WebAssign and start your homework. Good luck.